Welcome, everybody, to our webcast, Top Reasons to Make Managing Your Pipeline a Priority. So, before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. You're going to be receiving this presentation and the recording within 48 hours of the webcast. Gloria and I both, we want to answer your questions, and you're welcome to put them in the Q&A panel, and you're also welcome to send your questions directly to TargetGov and Unanet, and we'll be giving you those email addresses throughout the presentation. There are 4 polls that are in the webcast, and we really hope that you'll participate in those polls. For us, it helps us to know our audience better, who we're talking to on the phone, so that we can tailor our content. Just quickly, I'm Kim Coster, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing for Unanet, and we are so excited. We have a special guest speaker today. It's Gloria Larkin, the President and CEO of TargetGov, and she's going to share some really great content with us. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Gloria.
Thanks, Kim. It's always a pleasure to be working with you and the Unanet team. Well, I've got a bio that reflects 21 years of experience in the federal space, but I tell you really the only thing that's important to everybody on the line is the second bullet. In just the last 6 years since we've started our own metrics, we've had our clients have won over $4 billion, with a B, $4 billion in federal contracts in using our FAST process. So everything that we're contributing to today's session is based in hard knock reality of the federal government marketplace. I'm very excited to be able to share it with everyone today and to team with Unanet for what you bring to the table from a pipeline perspective. Down in the center of the screen right now, you see an email address. You can send your questions in at any time. If you're listening to this as a live session or as a recording, we will be able to answer your questions. We will also have a questions at Unanet email address for you as well. And during the live session, you can type your questions into the chat box also. So that we have a lot of ways to chat with you today, or if you're listening to this as a recording, email us your questions and we will absolutely follow up. So Kim, you want to get us going on the first poll?
Absolutely. So this is the first one, so Jess, if you could launch it. Are you actively managing your pipeline? And just a simple yes, no, or I don't know. So, Gloria, I'd be interested to hear, do most of the folks out there, are they managing their pipeline effectively, or is it just the different levels of pipeline management that we're seeing out there?
It's absolutely a wide range. Most folks don't really have a complete pipeline. What they do have may be opportunities that they consider in the capture phase. But what we're seeing is from a perspective of a true pipeline that companies are not managing it on a day-to-day basis. They're more prone to be focused on what is happening. Is there an industry day coming up? Is there something specific to a specific opportunity, as opposed to focusing in on the customers and what's happening from the customer's perspective.
That makes a lot of sense. So Jess, has the poll closed?
It has, and I am sharing the results right now. So we had 55% said yes, 28% said no, they're not actively managing their pipeline, and 18% said I don't know. So a good mix.
Yeah, I think that was that seems pretty representative of the overall industry to me, Gloria. I don't know about you, but that seems to, a lot of people are managing their pipeline, and then some have a ways to go on that activity.
Yep, agreed. So let's go ahead and start rolling into what we're talking about with an agenda. Well, I've gotten a little bit forward because I cannot see the buttons now on where to go. So if you can get me back to the agenda, There we go. Thanks a million. So today, what we will do is how to build a pipeline of really specifically targeted opportunities. What the heck is a pipeline really in the federal government marketplace today? What are the decision factors that you would consider in building an effective pipeline? How far ahead? You know, are we talking 6 months, 9 months, 18 months, 24 months, or longer? And then we roll into some of the Unanet expertise on properly tracking this whole process and the efforts that go into it, where you learn from your wins and also, not to forget, how to adjust with the pain of your losses. What do you take away from the losses? Because we don't win everything that we submit. In managing the forecasting, I really am excited about your talking about this, because this is one of the areas that many companies are using old processes and old methods on. And by understanding what's available now from a forecasting standpoint, it really brings them into today. In real-time visibility, this is all about marketing, all about communications with the targets, whether they're agencies directly or other companies. So how that affects your pipeline and business, we're going to go into that as well. And of course, what kind of tools should we be taking a look at? So in addressing the idea of when do you start a pipeline, building the pipeline, most of us focus on that orange colored element of this graphic, the actual client opportunities. And if we're thinking that we have a goal of 10 million or a goal of 50 million or 100 million or a billion, whatever the goals are, that tends to be the focus. How many opportunities does that goal, the end goal, represent? And that's this orange colored element in the funnel. When in reality, a pipeline begins far ahead of that actual goal. In working backwards, you see the yellow section of opportunities. And these are those that we've qualified, that we've gone through the bid, no bid process. But before that, we have the leads, the prospects, the suspects. And we have to build a pipeline that is far larger than our end goal. And you'll see how much larger when we get to an upcoming poll where we talk about your close ratio and how much business you typically close on. But one of the elements that we're seeing become so critical in the federal government contracting market is the marketplace has absolutely started shifting. The old ways of capture just do not work as well as they used to. So most companies think of pipeline equals capture process, when in fact the pipeline should equal the suspects opportunities, the prospect opportunities, as well as the leads. All three of these broader areas of the pipeline, for companies who are seeing aggressive results and aggressive growth, they are actually broadening their pipeline, but appropriately. It's not that they're chasing everything under the sun. That's not the benefit of having a strong pipeline. A strong pipeline means that you only focus on targeted opportunities that are targeted for a reason, either the customer or your services or your products. So we're not espousing chasing everything and chasing every RFP or source of thought that comes out, but rather being very, very specific on how you start building the pipeline. So the types of opportunities we'll get into in just a moment, but in understanding this graphic in front of us, most companies focus on the yellow and orange, and that would be the capture process. That means you've identified specific opportunities and you're pursuing it. However, the problem is that when you only focus on the yellow and the orange, you start winning fewer and fewer. By bringing in a broader range of opportunities, those in the greens and the blue areas, the suspects and the prospects that develop into leads, that's when you can really start seeing aggressive growth. You're getting fresh customers into the pipeline, fresh opportunities, and new decision makers are hearing from you. New decision makers who don't know your company yet, new decision makers who have the ability to write the requirements that specify your differentiators. This is where a strong pipeline really, really comes into play. So when really do you start building this pipeline? Well, let's talk about what that means. It means everything from marketing the business into business development, and yes, finally into capture. You know, most experienced companies in the federal government marketplace, their conversation is all about capture. And I understand why that worked until recently. And what is happening that started recently is what is changing the marketplace dramatically. And what that is the decision makers, the baby boomer generation of decision makers in the federal government are leaving. Over 43% retired between 2013 and now, this year, 2018. So the decision makers who may have known you, loved you, wanted to do business with you, there's a 43% chance that they're no longer part of the decision-making process. So that means the new people who are coming on need to hear from your company from a marketing perspective, from a business development perspective, before you get to capture. So from a small opportunity standpoint, what does that mean? That could mean a short timeline, 6 to 9 months out, depending on what small means to your company. You know, with the hundreds of folks that registered for today's webinar, we had a range of companies represented. We have the very large systems integrators attending. We have typical large businesses. We have the mid-sized businesses, too small to be large, too large to be small. And now we also have typical small businesses attending. So this kind of opportunity, when I say small opportunity, it's small as it relates to your typical business line. So having a pipeline that can be solid at 6 to 9 months is really possible. But if you're looking at the mid-size opportunities or large size opportunities, you're going to find the timeline, of course, stretching out. And I know that there's many on the line today that this is second nature. However, it's second nature from a capture standpoint and not second nature from marketing and business development. We've done TargetGov in the last 6 years have analyzed over 2,000 businesses that fit a full range of size standards. And the vast majority, over 95%, whether they were large, small, or mid-sized companies, over 95% of companies were failing at proactive marketing themselves. So they were not taking the time to put in place a corporate marketing process that the new decision makers would be receiving. This is critical to the first step in building a strong pipeline. So from the mid-size opportunities, having a window that is 9 to 18 months out, and within these windows, let me tell you some of the tasks that you're doing. You're identifying all of the decision makers, not just the contracting and acquisition team, but also the program level team. You're also identifying, whether you're large or small, you're identifying the small business representatives, the PCRs, the procurement center representatives, and you're creating relationships with all three layers. And I use the word layers purposefully because for each opportunity, there may be 6 decision makers, 9, 12 decision makers, depending on the size of the opportunity that you're building. And for those large IDIQs, those large multiple award contracts, or even the single award contracts, 18, 24, even 36 months out is demanded in the federal government marketplace from not just capture, but the very, very important marketing and business development process. So Kim, I'm going to throw it back to you. Tell us about this poll.
Great. So our next poll really is about your win rate. So could you tell us your current win rate? Is it 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, or 76 to 100%? Now, interesting enough, Gloria, Unanet participates in a government contracting benchmarking survey, and we just got our new results into this question. And we were seeing, I think, some really good numbers. 44% of the respondents said that their win rate was between 26 to 50%. And we had another 25 that went 51 to 100. So I think those are some pretty good numbers, pretty encouraging to get out there and actually bid on contracts.
You know, that the win rates I'm seeing also are very aligned with the numbers that you mentioned, as long as the targets are known entities. And that's really part of that funnel issue. If you're going after opportunities where you are a known entity, they trust you, they understand your capacity, they realize that you have the financial wherewithal to perform on the contract, your win rates will fit those numbers that you mentioned. But for those companies who don't know how to get that message across that incorporates all of those factors, you know, we do have the past performance. We don't know you, this agency, really well, but we have complementary past performance. Oh, let's look at the results. What do we have here?
Jess, if you could read them out for me.
Will do. So Gloria, what is your current win rate? We have 33% said 0 to 25. 39% said 26 to 50, 22% said 51 to 75, and then we had 6% in the range of 76 to 100%. So that's great for those guys.
This is a really interesting range, and I appreciate everybody giving us the feedback on it. This is real. This shows the reality of the marketplace. So let's go ahead. Thank you all for giving us that feedback. That is a little different than some of the numbers that you mentioned earlier. but it reflects the companies that are on today's webinar. I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So in the decision factors that you want to consider, that you may not think through all of the decision factors when you're building an effective pipeline, because most companies will have too small a pipeline given the current federal contracting market issues, the budget's uncertainties, the threatened shutdowns, and of course, the ever-present political environment. In order to address all of these issues, you may find that your pipeline needs to go outside of your typical customer base. If you're in the IC community, you may want to start building a pipeline using the same services outside of the IC community. If you are in the manufacturing world, you may want to start looking at some of the agencies that you have not typically targeted. If there are issues related to federal contracting that you're finding unique in your marketplace, it will give you an idea of why you don't want to put all of your eggs into a particular basket, and instead perhaps consider diversifying. I'm not saying everybody should diversify, because that's not the case. Consider diversifying if it comes into play. So that means many companies have too narrow a focus on targets. I can't tell you how many companies reach out to us and say, we want to get into XYZ agency. They have a predetermined idea that they want to do business with that agency. And they may not have analyzed the marketplace and just don't know that there are other agencies that have better opportunities, more flexible vehicles, as well as opportunities that may be coming up much quicker than the targets they had in mind. So in developing an effective pipeline, you want to have a much larger pipeline early on and take a look at some of the targets that may not be within your typical range. And then many companies only focus on their opportunities being a prime. And this goes for large businesses as well as small businesses, because it's pretty typical that a large business is going to consider a prime position. Whereas if they consider a sub or a teaming position on a small business set aside, heck, we've helped clients win $500 million small business set asides with large businesses as subs and teaming partners. So it's not always the foregone conclusion that your pipeline should only have prime contracting opportunities. If you're a small business, a mid-size, or a large, leveraging all three of these strategies, with each one essentially representing about a third of the market. So for those companies who say, I'm only interested in prime contracting opportunities, you just effectively shut yourself out of 2/3 of the business. So by considering being a sub or considering being a teaming partner, you can, with considering a prime position, give yourself the opportunity for the entire marketplace within your targeted customers, and not just only focus on a pipeline that is 100% prime contractor opportunities. So as we move forward and we start thinking about some of the decision factors in building an effective pipeline, what are your growth goals? I can't tell you how many businesses that when I ask this question, they do not have specific growth goal. They'll say, I want to grow 5% or I want to grow 10%. What exactly does that translate to? What are the numbers? What are the revenue goals that you have from a growth standpoint? Does your growth goal include new clients, new customers? Are you focused in that growth only on your current products or services? Or are you considering diversifying either with the target base? Will you go outside of your current customers? And are you considering diversifying your products or services to address a changing marketplace? Cyber is obviously an extraordinarily high growth area, competitive, yes, but very high. So what type of diversifying would you be willing to consider? As you look to other factors in building a pipeline, what's your past performance? You know, everyone on the call understands the government past performance, but your private sector past performance is critical as well. And how you tell that story. Remember, we started off by saying business development and marketing are two areas that many companies, and probably the majority on today's webinar, do not have a proactive plan put together. So if you focus on both government and the private sector, starting to put metrics around your past performance is a great message to use when you're creating that marketing and business development process. And that could be a webinar all on its own. We could talk about that later, maybe another time. So if you're developing new products or services, you're going into a new geography. Now, this next one is really a kicker. Are you considering the profitability of the growth, or are you looking at volume as the goal? There are some companies that 100% will measure their growth by profitability, and others are very satisfied with the dollar volume measuring growth. And every company has to make that decision yourself, as well as your return on investment target. Are you happy with a 5% ROI? Are you looking at 20%, 40%, or even higher on an ROI target? Our clients see somewhere between 40 and 50% ROI as a typical return on their marketing, business development, capture process. So by using the tools to measure these will help you understand how to make a much, much more realistic budget and develop a budget not just for dollars, but for resources. What will I actually have to commit to this process in building a very effective, high ROI pipeline? Which leads us right into the next poll. Kim, back to you.
All righty. So this next one is, we really want to see how win rates have changed from prior years. So has it increased 10% or more? Increased approximately 1 to 9%? No change year over year? Decreased 1 to 9%? Or decreased more than 10%? Now, again, in the survey that we just received, we saw that about 52%, Gloria, showed a no change year over year, and we had about 28% that had increased. So I think that's those are some pretty good numbers as far as, you know, at least some stability. We saw also in that government survey a lot of optimism about, you know, government contracting in general. So hopefully we'll see those numbers go up a little bit next year. But for this year, I think those are really strong numbers. Again, showing the optimism that's out there.
Yeah, we love optimism. We can use it, right? It's really a
Always use
critical.
optimism.
Yeah. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this business if we weren't looking at optimism. But look at these numbers. Here we have a little bit of a different reflection from our current attendees.
So could you give us I'm sorry, I can't see them, Gloria, so if you could just give us a quick, you or Jess, give us a quick synopsis of that.
Sure, this is Jess Kim. The question was, how has your win rate changed from prior years? So we had 16% said it's increased more than 10% or 10%. 31% said it's increased 1 to 9%. 35% said, level playing field, no change year over year. 11% said it decreased 1 to 9%, and 6% decreased 10% or more. So really nice spread throughout across the board.
Those are great numbers, Gloria. So
they're very informative, frankly. And for those companies that are seeing an increase, that total was 47% for the top two. So increase 1 to 10% or more. You're doing something right, but you probably want to grab hold of that ROI and improve the ROI, even on your wins. For those that are no change year over year, you absolutely want to improve your ROI. That's one of the areas that you want to grab hold of, the whole marketing, business development, capture, B&P cost, all of that. If you can grab hold of that and increase your ROI, then your bottom line profit will improve even if you don't win more. So I love these numbers. Thanks for everyone in responding to them. And as we've reached the midway mark of today's webinar, these processes that we have up now, the first one, I tell you what, so few companies really are aggressive in the sources sought and RFI process. And this is probably one of the biggest sleeper opportunities out there for companies to grab hold of. Most companies, large, mid-size, and small, are passive when it comes to the sources sought and RFI process, meaning they may answer it, but then they don't do anything after they've answered it. Or they don't answer it and they just expect to wait until the RFP or RFQ comes out and then pursue it then. And I'm going to tell you that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, because it's those companies who grab hold of the sources sought process. Over 3,000 are posted every month. And they're there for a reason, and the smart companies are grabbing hold of this process and they're owning those RFPs and RFQs that are coming out as a result, because they understand that while the government's using sources sought and RFI either for market research or process research or cost research, that smart and informed contractors are actually using it to shape the opportunity, to shape it either from an acquisition strategy standpoint, to either take it out of the set-aside world or to put it into the set-aside world, depending on your preference, and to shape it from a technical standpoint. So that's why I put this as number one. If you develop an aggressive, trackable, measurable sources sought and RFI process after the response, then you have a much better chance of improving your win rate on those sources sought and RFIs that are literally flooding the marketplace. We're all used to analyzing opportunities, whether they're new ops with no incumbents, they're recompetes, and of course the max and IDIQs. However, many people aren't doing it effectively. And what I mean by that is, I see too many companies that are on virtually every Mac or IDIQ they could be on, and yet they're not getting business out of them. So it's one thing to put in all the BMP costs to win a Mac or IDIQ. It's something else altogether to get business out of it. A perfect example of that, my friends, is Seaport E. Of the thousands of businesses on it, there is really just a very small percentage that are seeing regular business result from that particular contract vehicle. So in improving that process in a pipeline of those current task orders that are on your existing vehicles, how are you measuring that pipeline? Are you even incorporating those future task orders? And do you have a trackable, measurable marketing and business development process for those task orders? Most companies on large contract vehicles are not proactively marketing, and therefore they're not winning on those contract vehicles. So we're going back to the process of getting in early and marketing over and over all year long, from a corporate marketing process to your targets. The speedy bid no bid decision making process, I tell you, I see most companies honestly running this by their gut, whether they're large, mid-sized, or small, that they have a gut feel on whether or not they can win it. Now, if your win ratio is at 75%, trust your gut because it's obviously heading you in the right direction. But I'm going to venture a guess that that's not everybody on the line. So if you don't have a trackable, measurable bid no bid decision making process where you can literally assign a win probability factor, then you're just chasing dreams in your pipeline. So developing that bid no bid decision making process, and we're actually going to give you one today, complimentary as being part of the webinar. This can be extraordinarily valuable tool to you in increasing your win probability off your current pipeline as well as moving forward. Everybody knows about the subscription services, you know about the public services, but I tell you, so few people are really using them effectively. They might have a great subscription service, they get a ton of opportunities listed, and then they look at them and say, what the heck do I do with these? Because without that bid no bid decision making process where you can prioritize the pipeline, you're really just chasing dreams, and that's not a way to win. But believe it or not, the social media element to this is really starting to be more and more important. And by that, we mean building relationships through social media with your targets and all of the decision makers at those targets. The agencies, the primes, the teaming partners, this is the way folks communicate, and we're even seeing opportunities posted through social media now. So if you're not using it, there's a good chance that your competitors are. And so you want to take a look at that. In any case, the resources that you have available, you really want to focus on something that is trackable and measurable so that you know what kinds of success you're seeing out of your pipeline. And what I'd like to do right now is just give you a tip on something that works extraordinarily well. We branded it, it works so well. It's called the TargetGov Rule of Three. And we've been talking about different decision makers and marketing to them. All three layers of decision makers. We're talking about those that are contracting and acquisition, those that are at the program level, And also those, believe it or not, it's small business. I know they don't buy a dime, but whether you're large or small, they can affect the outcome of an opportunity. And so we got those three layers of people in the government, and then we have primes, subs, teaming partners, other businesses. And right now I'm going to give you the rule of three that will improve your win ratio if you start using this today. And the rule of three is never reach out to any decision makers for a meeting, and I mean no one. Don't reach out to agencies or primes or teaming partners. Never have a get to know you meeting. Never have a dog and pony show. Never get together for coffee to see what you can talk about until you have actually identified at least 3 solid opportunities to discuss. You know, when I first started, I mentioned our metric, $4.3 billion in the last 6 years. And much of it distills down to this. In your pipeline and your meetings, always have at least 3 opportunities before you reach out and meet with anyone and have a capability briefing with anyone. These opportunities will show that you're prepared. And if they shoot you down on the first one, because you know they will, their job is to try to get rid of you. And so if they shoot you down, you came in prepared for one, and they tell you, oh, we don't know if we have funding for that, or we already have our teaming partner, or, you know, for whatever reason, they're shooting you down. Your response to that is, that's okay. I have this other opportunity to discuss. If they try to shoot you down on that one, you'll have a third opportunity to discuss. This is where you start seeing traction instead of spinning your wheels. You get these 3 opportunities, whether you're using forecasts, sources sought, recompetes, FPDS, Easy GovOps, USA spending, subscription services, free services. You can use them all in order to find these at least 3, ideally 5 or 7. But no matter if it's a prime, a teaming partner, or an agency, if you take this away with you, never have another meeting until you have 3 to discuss. You will start seeing some extraordinary results. And of course, I'd love to talk to you about our FAST process. This is our core offering where we help companies grow aggressively, or the Kickstart process if you're new to the federal government as a large, mid-size, or small business. We'd be happy to chat with you about either of those. But in the meantime, Kim, it's all yours again.
Okay, so we have one last poll, and this is a fun poll, okay? So, you know, what are your biggest business development challenges? Is it lack of past performance information, lack of a teaming partner, limited reporting tools, or lack of business development funds and personnel? And interestingly enough, Gloria, we do have, have again from the benchmarking survey that was recently done, the majority of the folks cited business development funding and resources as the biggest challenge that they have. And second was lack of a teaming partner.
And that's been consistent in the federal government marketplace. So this really gets into the pipeline world of what do we need to have a strong pipeline with limited resources. You know, we can't throw a lot of money at it. We don't have a lot of people that are doing nothing. So how do we make them effective, and how do we really see results? And speaking
Absolutely.
of results, what kind of results do we have on this poll?
Checking it out. So the question was, what is your biggest business development challenge? So the first one was 25% of the people said lack of past performance information. 8% said lack of a teaming partner. 11% said limited reporting tools. And then Kim, you were spot on with the data. 56% said lack of BD funds and personnel. So that's pretty consistent what we found.
Awesome. Okay, well, again, thank you guys so much for participating in that. And Gloria, thank you so much for your presentation. It was awesome. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of forecasting the pipeline and to the overall financial forecast, and then some techniques that you might employ within your business. So first off, the pipeline and the opportunity pipeline is the basis for the overall revenue forecast. And it's really made up of firm projects that you're executing, projects that you've bid, opportunities, and what I like to call crystal ball projects, or I believe Gloria was calling those suspects and prospects. So things that are out there on the horizon, you may have some intel into those projects and the winning of those, and you want to get them into your out-year forecasts. Now, the revenue forecasts truly are the barometer of your company's health, so they are very important and a very important part of decision making overall. And the output from the opportunity pipeline is a huge contributor to two major company forecasts. The first is the annual operating plan, which really is the forecast for the instant year. It's got a lot of detail. You're looking at variance analysis on that detail, probably monthly. Then we have the long range plan, or the LRP, and we're looking out from 2 to 5 years, and I've seen it from 2 to 7 or 2 to 10, and I've seen in smaller companies they only really need a 3-year horizon. So it's really up to what the business needs in order to make good decisions. And it's very important to keep that long range plan up to date. For instance, let's just say that you've lost an opportunity out in the future, maybe the 3rd year. What are you going to do to fill that up? What kind of opportunities can you go after? Can you look for maybe a different product line or expand a product line that you currently have? Now, forecasting should take place at each stage gate, and then there's multiple types of techniques that you can employ, and especially as that opportunity moves down the funnel, you're going to have more and more clarity around the actual forecast. Now, modeling scenarios and doing what-ifs are a great way to ensure that you're picking the right path and then maximizing your resources and then your resultant profitability. For example, you may ask yourself, if I lose that large project in year 2, what are the effects on my rates? What are the effects on bids I may already have out there? Another question you may ask is, from a labor perspective, what if I decide I want to outsource some of the labor? Is that going to save money, or should I employ the people that I have on the projects that I have currently in-house? Being able to really do trade-offs is very, very important. Now, one technique when forecasting for the long-range plan is factoring. And factoring really is necessary to account for uncertainty and risk that you have out there in the longer horizon. One method you might use for that is the probability of award, or POA. And the probability of award can be a mechanism used to accurately estimate the real revenue opportunity. So it's going to size it correctly. Now, the calculations for POA, they're here on the chart. And it's very simple. It's P-win times P-go, and that gives you the probability of award, which you then apply to your estimate. Now, if you're not familiar with P-win really is the probability that you're going to win that bid. Okay, and you're looking at competitors, discriminators, things that make you special, and any other factor that may be associated with your company. P-go then is is the customer going to fund it? Is there money? So again, those are going to change through time. A competitor might come in and that you weren't expecting and change your P-win. So you're constantly needing to look at that and adjusting to those changing environments. Now, having the ability to model scenarios, it's going to play a huge role in the accuracy of your forecast and then ultimately the confidence in your business decisions. So the POA, it can be a great tool for portfolio level kinds of analysis and at the lower level too. But at lower levels, you may want to recognize the effort either being one at some expected value. So that could be 100, 0, 80, 20. And rather than using the POA. And that expected value, it may be more precise because you're going to know at this short time period in near-term work whether or not you're going to win that project or not. You're going to have a really good feeling for that. So that might actually give you a better forecast. Now, another technique that you can employ is grouping. So grouping projects makes it easier to forecast, especially in the 2 to 5 year time period. So those groups may be programs, clients, products, and a business unit portfolio, whatever the grouping is that's applicable to the kinds of projects that you'll be going after. And in certain cases, you can look at these forecasts in aggregate and really derive an accurate forecast because you understand the client demand, you know how much funding they have, you know your capacity, you know what your growth potential is going to be. And so forecasting using these constraints, again, the constraints are capacity or funding, and any other pertinent information that you may have can really help come up with a very good forecast, and especially in the out years. Also, when looking at your pipeline forecast, you need to do a check of reasonableness and add that into your process. Now, I suggest that C-suite members and project teams work together to decide on the level of forecasting needed and what the purpose is for that forecast. There's a whole lot of uses for a project forecast within the overall business unit. For example, an AOP is a short-term project, and granularity is very necessary. You need to be able to dial that in. An LRP, that long-range plan, you may utilize detailed forecasting for an agreed-upon time period, so you know everything that's going to happen in year 2. And then you may decide for a different set of projects, you want to utilize grouping because you've got a well-known product line and you understand what's going to be happening with that product line. And then for your crystal ball top projects, you may want to use the POA method. So multiple methodologies can be used when we are going off and forecasting the pipeline as a part of the overall revenue forecast. The other thing that we want to be sure to think about is the frequency of the update and who is needed to provide that input. So my experience is from the annual operating plan, we would do that once a month, and we would be looking at the long range plan probably once a quarter, and if we had some significant event, we would go ahead and update that long-range plan and then be looking at strategies as those changes had been made. Another aspect of forecasting, and Gloria mentioned this, and especially for professional services organizations, is labor resources. And so you need to know what labor resources you need, when, and what particular skill or certification that you might need. And in certifications, I'm thinking things like, some solicitations require a PMP. Some projects need top secret clearances, and you can't wait till the last minute to get those resources available. You need to make sure that you're not going to delay the project because of a skill set or a certification, especially that you knew beforehand. So there's lots of methodologies for techniques for forecasting, and really I only have a little bit of time, so I only touched on a few, but I hope it gets your creative juices flowing about how well you're actually forecasting your overall pipeline. But do keep in mind that organizations that track and forecast their pipeline are more successful in obtaining their overall organizational goals. So let me just show you a report, which is the pipeline forecast report. Very important that you're able to look at this information and see it in real time. So in this report, you're able to see the stage gate. You're able to look at the customers, what the project is, and then the different values for the project. This is also able to take other information. So you may have your POA, your different forecasts, and be able to slice and dice the information. Maybe this isn't the only slice and dice you want. Maybe you want to be able to look at it by overall portfolio. So having a tool that allows you to do that and having a report that gives you that information at your fingertips is very important. As a part of forecasting the opportunity pipeline, we also need to be able to have reports that show us the resources. And so it's not just the resources of things that we're bidding on or opportunities, but we also need to understand what resources are being applied to contracts that we're currently executing. So we need to understand when those resources are needed and whether they're under or overutilized. Now, the one thing about this report that is so interesting to me is my eyes immediately pop to those red highlights here and the yellow. Okay, green, I already know that's going to be good, but I immediately pop to that red. That gives us the chance, with reports like this that are up on a dashboard, it gives you a chance for the company to standardize around what I call management by exception. So, focusing on the items that are critical, that need decisions to be made. Now, measuring the health of your pipeline. Gloria mentioned some using metrics for that. So here's just some key metrics that you might want to consider using. So, pipeline snapshots, really being able to look year over year. How well are you performing first quarter of 2017 to first quarter of 2018? We talked a little bit about win rates, being able to look at those win rates. Also, equally as important is being able to look at the losses and then the lessons learned from those losses. Some other metrics that you might want to look at are, the phase statistics. We looked at a couple on that pipeline snapshot report, but, there may be other statistics that you want to understand by phase. Labor utilization, skill sets, a lot of different metrics that you might want to track. And then these are just a couple that you might want to employ. We also have a book that we just wrote that also has a lot of pipeline metrics in it that you might be interested in looking at. And you can go to unanet.com and we can help you get to that book. Now, when you need a tool to manage your pipeline, having it off in Excel and not integrated with all the rest of the business, as we talked about, it's so important as a part of the overall revenue forecast for the company. So you want to make sure that you have a tool that's 100% integrated with your project-based ERP system and that you're able to track all your customer interactions. Also, it's important to be able to look at that opportunity, tracking it by phase, be able to understand what's going on phase by phase with dashboards and metrics at your fingertips. And again, real-time data that you're utilizing, so you're updating that continually. We also want to be able to do what if. So we want to be able to shift forecasts to the right or to the left, and then make those POA adjustments and then compare those to our prior forecast. One other thing that is really important is to be able to have the forecast in your ERP system, but then be able to do a one-click transformation, turning that into a billable and executable project without having to start over and hand key all that information back in. And then having a cloud-based system that's there for you, 24/7, 365. Now, Unanet, I've got to do a plug, I'm so sorry, but Unanet is that software where you can track your customers, pipeline, as well as all your active projects. You can monitor, get KPIs for every phase of the project lifecycle, as well as track all your financials in one cloud-based, project-based ERP tool. So with that, Gloria, I'm going to turn it back over to you to take us out.
Well, I thank you very much, Kim. You did perfectly on that. The timing is beautiful. From a handout standpoint, we promised the bid no bid decision tool, and we're going to provide that for you. Also, a matchmaking and briefing pitch. This is something that even very experienced folks who are involved in capture, business development can freshen up how you're speaking to decision makers who don't know you, where you're going to the industry days or you're focusing in on matchmaking sessions. We have developed a tool that will help you with a very concise message to get across no matter with whom you're meeting. Of course, the TargetGov Rule of 3, and you'll be sending out the PowerPoint as well. So from a contact standpoint, you can email the questions to us at TargetGov with questions at TargetGov, or directly to Kim Coster at Unanet with kcoster@unanet.com.
And thank you so much, Gloria, and thank you all for participating.
It's been a pleasure. Have a great day. I'll look forward to staying in touch with everyone online. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Gloria. Bye-bye, everybody.